After probably the most talked about South Park premiere of all time, Season 27 will actually be taking a week-long break as they prepare the second episode of the season. This is not the first time South Park has missed an episode deadline, though it is very rare, and the announcement came with a smattering of footage, presumably from next week's episode, including Cartman masquerading as Charlie Kirk. Though there may be some reason to doubt if this will all be included next week, but let's go over the reason for the delay and break down these brief new snippets for next week's episode. And of course, if you like these videos, please make sure to stick around as I plan to cover every single new episode of South Park this season. Thanks. So earlier today, there was much panic amongst fans when the Comedy Central schedule replaced episode 2702 with a rerun of the season premiere, Sermon on the Mount. And of course, after the content of last week's episode, that panic was very much rooted in the question, did it happen? Did South Park get canceled? To which I gotta say, this, of course, comes after a week where South Park was talked about maybe more than I've ever seen in my life. Like, my mother heard about the new episode and she has never seen South Park ever. The number of reaction videos I saw all over YouTube was astronomical. This thing made waves. And so obviously, it wasn't too insane for people to worry about an abrupt departure from the schedule. But luckily, it just seems to be the crew taking another week to get the episode in shape, which it's hard to be mad about. Now, South Park does tend to take week-long breaks in the midst of season runs to give themselves a little buffer sometimes, but typically they're limited to a couple of these a season, and they almost never come this soon into a run of episodes. I know of at least one other time where South Park missed a deadline due to issues beyond their control. Back in season 17, the episode Goth Kids 3 Dawn of the Posers was delayed because South Park Studios lost power on the Tuesday night before the episode was meant to air. Comedy Central released a statement and Variety covered this with an article, but obviously this was a very specific circumstance. Back when this happened in October 2013, Parker said in a statement, "It sucks to miss an air date, but after all these years of tempting fate by delivering the show last minute, I guess it was bound to happen." Well, that was 12 years ago, and it looks like Matt and Trey have tempted fate once again, though it seems like this time they're in a position where they really can just make the decision to delay so that their episode is up to snuff. Matt and Trey also appeared at San Diego Comic-Con last Thursday for a panel, so losing an entire workday likely didn't help their production schedule this week. They even mentioned at the panel that they had no idea what the next episode would be, and I'm sure after such a major reaction to their new episode, they want to make sure they deliver a very strong follow-up. There are a lot of eyes on them right now. Okay, let's go over this little teaser trailer, presuming that the footage is actually in next week's episode, because Matt and Trey did just reveal at Comic-Con that the entire season 27 trailer they made months ago was just random scenes they threw together only for the trailer. And I have to say, I got to apologize to anyone who called this in my comment section because I pretty flagrantly disagreed with you, and I was 100% wrong. My bad. But I think that this footage is likely actually from next week's episode. At least two of the clips shown I'm very confident about, starting with this one.
You can just shut up, baby, because you hate America and you love abortion.
So this is just Cartman being blatantly portrayed as Charlie Kirk, a political commentator who is one of the biggest chodes out there, I'd say. Pretty fitting. You can really see this is meant to be Kirk with his receding hairline here. But basically, this seems to be parodying these sort of public debate events that Charlie does, where he invites people to debate policies with him and then tries to collect viral moments for himself to bolster his online presence and platform. Now, I'd say Cartman being the Charlie Kirk would be a really strong fit here generally, but maybe less so after last week's episode, where Cartman was really lamenting the loss of woke culture because it made him reflect on his own place in society, wondering how he stands out when he's no longer countercultural and people who behave like he does are more common. I can see this Charlie Kirk swing playing out a couple of different ways. This could be purely Cartman acting for personal and financial gain, creating viral moments and using the whole right-wing grift formula to bring himself fame and fortune. Alternatively, I could see him maybe trying to use this method as a means to sort of quicken the pendulum swing back to wokeness, act so out of pocket in such a clearly embarrassing manner as Charlie Kirk is wont to do, that the culture shifts back, returning Cartman to his previous place as the provocateur. Or maybe this is simply the evolution of how Cartman sees himself as the provocateur, fitting back in this self-proclaimed woke is dead era. This also shows PC Principal standing behind Cartman with a Holy Bible in front of him, so we can presume that not only is he still power Christian Principal, but he is in fact sanctioning and enabling Cartman's Kirkian behavior here. Next, we get a little snippet of ICE vehicles with Mr. Mackey seemingly taking part. I'm not entirely sure how Mackey might get caught up working with ICE, but this also feels like it could be one of those fake out clips. Like, this feels very in line with all the stuff they faked for the season 27 trailer, so if I I were to put money on any of these clips not being in next week's episode, it might be this one. But South Park has satirized ICE before. In the season 23 premiere Mexican Joker, Cartman got Kyle and his entire family detained and sent to ICE prison camps. But obviously, there is plenty more to satirize these days, particularly after ICE's funding drastically increased through the latest government spending bill, and their presence has been increased in all major cities. I do hope South Park takes on this subject. Mackie being at the center of this is interesting. He certainly seems reluctant to be a part of it, so I presume he maybe didn't know what he was getting himself into and is now in over his head. And of course, the last clip is a follow-up to our Saddam Trump x Satan storyline, with Trump being honored some way at a gala type event, getting very handsy under the table with his date Satan.
Stop!
This exact scenario is basically directly reminiscent of the two-part follow-up episodes they did to the South Park movie back in season 4, where Saddam returns to hell and completely disrupts Satan's life and new relationship. These shots are framed nearly identically, much like how the shots from last week mirrored shots from South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. It's pretty funny that they're so blatantly referencing these episodes, particularly because they aired almost exactly 25 years ago, back in July 2000. God, these episodes are quarter of a century old. That is crazy. I'm not surprised they're continuing this whole Trump x Satan thing. It felt like this would be a through line for the season, especially with how blatantly it's mirroring the old Saddam x Satan stuff. And of course, given the previous South Park lore and the fact that Satan has explicitly referenced his previous relationship with Saddam already, it will be interesting to see if this is meant to be Saddam in disguise, having taken Garrison Trump's place to run the show like a whiny dictator, or if they're just drawing the direct comparison to characterize Trump the exact same way. I'd be willing to bet that they don't even know which direction they'll go yet. Maybe we'll get the return of Saddam later in the season and they'll fight over Satan. But who knows? Maybe this is all once again entirely fake footage, but I get the sense that since they're in the middle of the workflow for an episode, it's actual promo. I am also really curious if we're going to see any more of these Trump PSAs like we got at the end of the season premiere, which if you haven't seen yet, the South Park socials posted a couple BTS images and they are so funny. It turns out Trey's actual finger was Trump's junk in that shot. And to anyone who feared that they were using full generative AI for this sequence, as I expected, this was fully shot with an actor on location with great makeup and prosthetics, and then they used deep fake tech to replace the face even more effectively. Honestly, very impressive, but not surprising. A few years back, Matt and Trey and one of my favorite comedians, Peter Serafinowicz, had this short-lived deepfake project called Sassy Justice, and the tech was already really impressive back then.
It's a very special story about a very special reindeer.
This project was actually basically a fallback on what was intended to be a full deepfake movie starring Trump that was shut down due to the pandemic and then shelved because it was no longer timely. But the description here sounds like they definitely repurposed ideas for this PSA. Parker said, "It was about this guy who looked exactly like Trump because we deepfaked Trump's face onto him, and it was this whole funny thing because of course it ends up with Trump just naked and getting run through the ringer and everything. And that's why it was so funny and so timely." Funny to see them resurrect this exact idea for South Park years later. I'm very eager to see if they do more of these, as it did say 1 of 50. Regardless, I am not sure if there have ever been more eyes on South Park. Somehow they've positioned themselves so effectively 28 years after the show premiered. This was being covered on every news program, late night show, YouTube commentary series, countless reaction videos. People you never imagined were tuning in to the season 27 premiere. So I can't wait to see how they follow it up. But what do you guys think about this week-long delay and about the clips we've seen of the upcoming episode? Let me know below in the comments, and I'll see you next week for season 27, episode 2. Peace.
I stay mellow watching Johnny two cellos. He talks cartoons, he's a really cool fellow. He keeps you posted on adult cartoons. If that's what you're into, then grab a spoon and a very big bowl of your favorite cereal. Feels like Saturday morning cartoon material. Johnny two cellos, watch him on YouTube. Now enjoy this groove and bust a move.